spirit. The yellow represents our spirit. The red represents our soul. The yellow is where the Spirit of God resides. The Spirit of God resides in our spirit. So the Holy Spirit is right here in us. The red represents our soul, which is where we have our feelings, our emotions, our mind, all of that. The blue represents our bodies, where we have our senses, right? All of our senses in our body. The black represents the world, okay? So as I go through this, I'll refer to this so you can kind of see how these should play out so that we would have a strong spirit. Let's just start with Luke. Just want to give you an example. Verse 11. It says, while Zechariah was in the sanctuary, Zechariah is John the Baptist's father, an angel of the Lord appeared to him standing to the right of the incense altar. Zechariah was shaken and overwhelmed with fear when he saw him. But the angel said, "Don't be afraid, Zechariah. God has heard your prayer. Your wife Elizabeth will give you a son, and you are to name him John. You will have great joy and gladness, and many will rejoice at his birth, for he will be great in the eyes of the Lord. He must never touch wine or other alcoholic drinks. He will be filled with the Holy Spirit even before his birth, and he will turn many Israelites to the Lord, their God. He will be a man with spirit and power of Elijah. He will prepare the people for the coming of the Lord. He will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children, and he will cause those who are rebellious to accept the wisdom of the godly." Okay, and then let's skip down to verse 80 of that same chapter. John grew up and became strong in spirit, and he lived in the wilderness until he began his public ministry to Israel. John grew up and became strong in spirit. Here's what's interesting. Before he was actually born, he was filled with the Spirit of God. Verse 80 says, "and became strong in spirit." So what does that say? That says that being filled with the Spirit of God doesn't necessarily make you strong in spirit. Because it would have said he was filled with the Spirit of God and was strong in the Spirit. It says he was filled with the Spirit of God, but he became strong. Meaning there was a working that had to happen in him for him to become strong in spirit. He didn't just get that because he was filled with the Spirit before he was even born. Interestingly, even Jesus wasn't filled with the Spirit before his birth. So here we have a supernatural event where John is filled with the Spirit while he's in the womb, and yet he's still not strong in spirit. And so he's out in the wilderness, out in the desert, doing what? Going deeper in God so that he might become strong in spirit, so that he can fulfill his assignment for which he was sent to earth. I think too often sometimes we want to run and get what God's destined for our lives without growing in the Spirit. All right, God, I'm ready. Let's do this. Come on, let's go. And God said, not ready. You need to grow and become strong in spirit. And so because John the Baptist and Jesus were about the same age, more than likely he was close to 30 at the time of his call for public ministry. because Jesus was 30 when he started his. And so let me just say, God isn't in a hurry to move you into your destiny. What he does want is he wants us to become strong in spirit so that when we start our ministry, all the stuff that's going to come against us, you've heard the saying, new levels, new devils. All the devils that come against us, we have the strength of spirit to be able to deal with the devils. Here's my point. So look here. The Spirit of God comes in us, and when we are strengthened in our spirit, we're able to combat the forces of the world. And this is how it works. The world sends stimuli to us. Typically, it comes through our senses. What we see, what we smell, what we taste, what we hear, all of what the world is and is about comes through our senses, our body. And then that'll actually have an impact on how we think, right? Because our thinking is in our soul. And what we think will actually have an impact on our spirit. And what we see is that the world then begins to dictate to us, our spirit, what's right, what's wrong, what we should do, what we shouldn't do, as opposed to being the reverse. The reverse is our spirit should be strong, and our spirit should dictate to our thinking, and our thinking should dictate to our bodies, and our bodies and everything about us should dictate to the world. That's how it should work as the people of God. But too often what happens is we're not strong in spirit, and then the result is becoming so bombarded with the things that are going on in the world that then has an effect and an impact on our spirit. And that's not what God designed for his people. He's not wanting us to become wimps of the things that happen in the world. Let me show you two really good examples. And I've used these texts in the past a lot. Hopefully, you can kind of understand what's going on here. So let's start in Mark 4, verse 35. As evening came, Jesus said to his disciples, "Let's cross to the other side of the lake." So they took Jesus in the boat and started out, leaving the crowds behind, although other boats followed. But soon a fierce storm came up. High waves were breaking into the boat, and it began to fill with water. Jesus was sleeping at the back of the boat, and his head on a cushion. The disciples woke him up, shouting, "Teacher, don't you care that we're going to drown?" When Jesus woke up, he rebuked the wind and said to the waves, "Silence, be still." Suddenly the wind stopped, and there was a great calm. Then he asked them, "Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith?" The disciples were absolutely terrified. "Who is this man?" they asked each other. "Even the wind and the waves obey him." Jesus is kind of upset. He's a little perturbed with them. Why? Why is he perturbed with them? Because they should be further along in the strengthening of their spirit. They should be further along in being able to embody a spirit that will allow them to overcome what's going on in the world. In this case, the wind and the waves. They should be at a place. They have been walking with Jesus for some time now, and he's saying, "Guys, what are you doing? Would you still have no faith? You should be at a place where you should be able to overcome what's going on in the world. Instead, rather than having your spirit dictate to what's happening in the world is dictating to you, and you're afraid." Isn't that what happens? Something in the world will happen, something close to us. We have a job issue, or we have a relationship issue. We have a financial issue. We have an issue with this and an issue with this. Somebody in our family has an issue. And then all of a sudden, we're shaken to the core. And these issues have an impact on our spirit. And then when that happens, we walk in fear. And God is saying, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's flip the switch. What you carry should have an impact on what's coming against you, not the other way around. And so they were not at a place where Jesus expected them to be. And so he rebuked him. It's like, come on, guys. You should be having a greater degree of strength and spirit by now. We've been together for a while. You've seen me do this. I've even given you, on my side, I've even given you part of the authority to cast out demons. Remember, he sent them out 2 by 2. That's already happened. And you've cast out demons, and you've healed the sick, and you've raised the dead. But now here's a storm, and you act like none of that has ever happened to you. That you never did any of that stuff. What's the deal? And I get a sense that God is asking us, what's the deal? Didn't I deliver you from X? And didn't I deliver you from Y? And didn't I deliver you from Z? Where is your trust now? Where is your trust? Are you going to be strong in spirit? And are you going to use your spirit to combat the stuff that's coming against you? Are you going to use your spirit to speak something different to your mind? Because the mind will take control of us. The mind will take us someplace where I'm like, it's so far out there, I don't know how you get back. The Bible says, take every thought captive, meaning put a stronghold on it and choke it out. Beat the life out of that thought. Like stomp that thought to death. This is what happens when we're strong in spirit. But when we're weak in spirit, those things overtake us. And we're crying out to Jesus, 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 help me, please, 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 please. Listen, I'm always for crying out for Jesus, right? Let me just clear that up. If you're going to cry out to somebody, he's the guy to cry out to. So let me clear that up. But then I have to ask myself, shouldn't I be at a better place? Shouldn't I be stronger in spirit? My kids are 22. What does it look like for them to say, hey, Dad, will you fix us breakfast? I'm like, what? What? You ought to be fixing me breakfast. Those days are gone, dude. I'm not doing for you what you can do for yourself. And this is the thinking that Jesus has here. He's like, guys, I'm on my way out. I've got, like, my days are numbered, and you are still at a place where you should be further along. You should be further along. Strength in spirit. Instead, you're still crying for me. Let's look at Hebrews 5, verse 11. The writer of Hebrews says, there is much more we would like to say about this. This is Christ and the authority and the position that he holds. But it is too difficult to explain, especially since you are spiritually dull and don't seem to listen. Ouch, just take the knife out of my heart. You have been believers so long now that you ought to be teaching others. Instead, you need someone to teach you again the basic things about God's word. You are like babies who need milk and cannot eat solid food. For someone who lives on milk is still an infant and doesn't know how to do what is right. Solid food is for those who are mature, who through training have the skill to recognize the difference between right and wrong. There's so much I would like to tell you, but from your actions, you're still in kindergarten. So there's no way I can talk to you about factoring, algebra. We've got to go back and we've got to work through 1 + 1 is 2. But you've been a Christian for so long now, you should be past that. You should be beyond that. In fact, you should be the teacher. You shouldn't have to need someone else to teach you. You should be teaching. But here we are, needing more teaching because it's difficult for you to understand the difference between right and wrong. Basic tenets of Christianity, right and wrong. Strong in spirit. And so this is the context that Jesus is talking to them in. Guys, let's go. I don't believe God is in a hurry, but when it's time to go, it's time to go. It's time to go. And it's incumbent upon us to make sure that when it's time to go, we're ready. When my wife and I are going somewhere, she's typically waiting on me. It's not because I'm not ready, but I want to make sure I got everything. I got my phone, I got my wallet, I got my this, I got my that. So we'll get in the car, we'll be backing out the driveway, and I'll be like, forgot my wallet, unless you want to pay. Then I'll have to go back and get it. Or I forgot my phone, or I forgot my this. And she's ready. She's ready to go. And so like me, we're like, wait, God, I got to do this. And I got to do this, 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 and I got to do this. And God is saying, can you get it together? I'm ready to go. I've been waiting 30 years for this. The door is opening for destiny. Let's go. Times are wasting. Yeah. And I believe we think we're waiting on God, and I believe God is waiting on us. He's waiting on us to get our stuff together. Okay, let's look at another bad example with the same group. Mark 6, 45. Immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and head across the lake to Bethsaida. While he sent the people home, after telling everyone goodbye, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. Late that night, the disciples were in their boat in the middle of the lake, and Jesus was alone on land. He saw that they were in serious trouble, rowing hard and struggling against the wind and the waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them, walking on water. Listen to this. He intended to go past them. But when they saw him walking on water, they cried out in terror, thinking he was a ghost. They were all terrified when they saw him. But Jesus spoke to them at once. Don't be afraid, he said. Take courage. I'm here. Then he climbed into the boat, and the wind stopped. They were totally amazed, for they still didn't understand the significance of the miracle of the loaves. Their hearts were too hard to take it in. So here's another issue. They're in the boat, trying to get across from one side of the lake to the other side of the lake. Jesus is up on the mountain praying. Here, by the way, this isn't Jesus looking at them on the hillside and seeing them in trouble. This is a supernatural experience. He's seeing this supernaturally, right? There's a supernatural picture that he's given, and he's like, yeah, they're having trouble. But he had already said to them, meet me on the other side. Let me just say this. Whatever the Lord commands, he enables. Whatever the Lord commands us to do, he enables us to do it. He will never command us to do something that he doesn't enable us to do. So the reason why he was going to walk past them on water was because, look, guys, I told you. I told you to that was the command, right? When God tells us to do something, there's a command. Do that. And when we take the command, we also take the enabling, the grace, the ability to make it happen. He gives us that with the command. It would be foolish for him to give us a command that we can't follow. So, they are struggling, trying to get to the other side. And they are struggling and struggling and struggling. And finally, they see him and they yell, hey, think it's the ghost, hey. He's like, hey, I'm coming. He gets in the boat, the wind stops. But listen to the scripture. The scripture says they were struggling because their hearts were hardened because they still didn't figure out what had happened with the loaves. Right before this is when Jesus feeds the 5,000. Now, the interesting thing about feeding the 5,000 is that he took the food, the loaves and the fish from the disciples who gave it to him. He gave thanks for it, and then he gave it back to the disciples. And they actually were the ones who fed the 15 to 20,000. It wasn't just 5,000 was just the men. And so it was actually, when they started giving it out, started multiplying. They were the ones who were actually distributing it, and it was multiplying through their hands. And so now here they are in a situation where they've just seen food multiply miraculously, but because their hearts, their spirits were hard, it didn't sink in. And they weren't able to use that lesson to bolster their spirits, to strengthen their spirit, because they were hardened. Everything that God does should elevate us. Remember I said last week, God, who is it that you want to be to me today? Because last week and last month and last year, you were this to me. You're taking me deeper so that I can go higher. Who do you want to be to me today? So that there's a strengthened spirit. Well, here's the problem. Their hearts were hardened. So the storm had an impact on their body and their brains, what they were seeing, what they were feeling, which had an impact on their thinking. Hey, we're going to drown. Which had an impact on their spirit, fear. Here's the interesting thing in both of these examples. In one example, Jesus is in the boat sleeping. In this example, he's walking on top of the waves. At no point does he rebuke the waves for himself. At no point does he rebuke the waves. He has enough peace to sleep through it. He has enough internal peace to sleep through all the stuff that's happening in the world. He's got enough peace, internal peace, to sleep through it all. No worries. And he's got enough authority to walk on the waves that he doesn't have to rebuke them. I said last week, there are some things we are trying to rebuke and ask God to take away and get rid of, and God is saying to us, I want you to walk on top of them. I want you to go to sleep in them. I want you to be strong in spirit and sleep through them. I don't want you to cry out to me every time something has happened. Go take a nap. Be at peace. As opposed to crying and complaining about what's not happening and how we can get this thing out of our lives. There are some things we want him to take. I'm good with that, right? But then there are some things that he's not going to take, right? There are some things that we got to get to the other side. Let's get to the other side. He commanded us, so he must have enabled us to do it. So let's tap into that. Let's make some declarations. Let's make some decrees. Let's call forth who we say we are, who the Bible says we are. Let's strengthen each other. Let's encourage each other all the more. Let's help each other. Somebody stand up and rebuke the waves. Let's not crumble because of the stuff and the junk that's coming against us in the world. Because here's the deal. I promise you, whatever you want to get rid of today, there will be 2 of its friends tomorrow. So you just might as well strap on and be like, whatever happens, I'm good and I'm ready. And so what happens is that we have to learn how to strengthen our spirit. And it's all the things that we know to do. Reading our Bible, worshiping God, praying, right? Coming to church, fellowshipping with each other, so that we don't become subject to the issues of the world. We cannot become strong in spirit. How many times you hear me say this? On 1 meal a week. This morning is an hour and a half. It's 1 meal. None of us can live on 1 meal a week. We die. Especially when the world is trying to throw everything at us, including the kitchen sink. The world is throwing everything at us. And how do we combat it? On 1 meal a week? Really? Not going to cut it. Not going to cut it. So you've got to feed your spirit. You got to feed it. Sydney and I were watching, she's got a affinity for watching all of the outtakes of movies. So when we're at home and we're watching a video, so we'll spend 2 hours watching a video, but then we'll spend another 2 hours watching all the other stuff, right? Because she's really interested in that. So one of the things that we learned in watching Thor, when Thor first came out, he was talking about how much he had to eat to get so big and strong. He said it was exhausting. He It was like having another job because he just had to eat and eat and eat and eat because you got to gain muscle. He had to work out and he had to eat. And that's what God is after. He's wanting us to eat and eat and eat and eat so that we can develop our spiritual muscles. It doesn't happen because I went to church. I went to church. God's like, yeah, that's good. What else? What else? Because we sang that song, and I will live for you. Right? Didn't we sing that? We sang it? Or were we lying when we were singing? We sang that song. So if we're actually living for him, then our whole life is about him. And being spiritually strong is part of that life. God is waiting on us to be the children of God, to transform the world. It's going to be from the inside out, not from the outside in. The inside out. A little here, a little there. You'd be surprised what will happen. You know, we don't go in the gym and try to lift 235 the first day. That's the two big plates on both sides, which all the guys ever want to get to is the 235. We don't go in the gym trying to lift 235. Like the first day, would be good if we can get 100. But if you stay consistent, and that's what God is looking for, is consistency. And you'd be surprised the power of consistency. Let's stand.